Do some in a minute, but before we jump into that, David, my fellow community member, is going to lead us in a grounding exercise.
So I probably should have messaged folks prior to and just shared, you know, with people the exercise or the practice that I was going to offer. So if people want to do it as well. And it's a practice that has been really supportive to me in my own spiritual journey. And it is calling out to my ancestors. And so I'd just like for folks to, you can watch. I'm going to move my computer a little bit. I have an altar in my office. And I just like for everyone to breathe for a minute, to close their eyes. Actually, don't close your eyes. Just sit comfortably. Lean back. Place your feet on the ground. If you have your shoes on, you can take them off. And another David Ragland just joined. And this is a prayer that I do daily. And I'm going to just take you a little. I don't know if you all can see this over here, but this is a very simple altar. And I am burning Palo Santo to just cleanse the area. And now I am lighting a candle on my altar. And just breathe with me as I offer a prayer. And on my altar, I have a photo of my grandmother, Goldie, Harriet Tubman, my Uncle Eugene, my Uncle Kelsey, Martin Luther King, all on my altar. O blood of my blood, this is your child, David. Humbly I ask, may my hands be fresh, may my head be clear, may the road be open. Know that you are honored and respected. Accept this offering for the good. Watch over your descendants. If you have a moment now, please call into any ancestors right now that you would like to ask for their guidance or energy.
Janie, Jason, Jerome.
Julia Manrique,
Ashe.
Francisco Manrique,
Ashe.
John Philippe.
Ashe.
Isaiah, Leon.
Ashe. Accept this offering of libation Watch over your descendants. Let there be no death. Let there be no illness. Let there be no accident. Let there be no upheaval. Let there be no poverty. Let there be no ill fate. I want to dispel fear, mistrust, violence. Please name any attributes that you wish to dispel.
Racism.
Injustice,
Imperialism.
Ashe,
disunity,
ashe,
and violence.
ashe,
Lies.
ashe,
envy,
ashe,
Anger.
ashe,
hate,
ashe,
Vengeance.
ashe. Stand fast for us, for our good fortune, for our wealth, for our happiness, for our homes, for our health. We want to attract justice, joy, love, abundance. Please name any attributes you want to attract.
passion,
Wisdom.
Ashe,
Joy,
ashe,
Love.
unity,
ashe,
wisdom,
ashe,
Community care.
ashe,
Forgiveness.
ashe,
Empathy.
ashe,
Harmony.
ashe,
love,
ashe,
kindness,
ashe,
Full bellies.
ashe. Thank you, blood of our blood. Thank you. You can join me in this song if you like to. This is a song that BYP 100 sings, is part of it. I know they're watching, ancestors watching. I know they're watching, I know. I know they're watching, ancestors watching. I know they're watching, I know. I know they're watching, ancestors watching. I know they're watching, I know. Breathe. Know that we are being held by so many who've come before us. Ashe.
Thank
Love
you.
and respect to you.
Love
And respect to
you.
Thank you, David. Thank you, everybody. So with that grounding, we're going to move into hearing from our guests. Sister Sharifa Vernice Maytung. Did I say it right? Maytung? Okay. Ntebo Maya Mokwena. Did I say that one right? Yeah. And Alan Levin are going to share in that order. And then after we hear from each of them, we're going to break into small groups to talk a little bit about what they've shared, and then we'll come back together as a big group. So that's the kind of, the plan. And people are also welcome to use the chat to communicate thoughts that they have as things are going. So I think I'll give a brief introduction of Sister Sharifa before I hand it over to her. Sister Sharifa is somebody who I first met in Philly, like around 2002, I think. a while back, and is a wonderful leader for me at a spiritual and a political level, whose path has traversed a lot of different continents and a lot of different traditions. She's currently focused on engaging with the Catholic spiritual tradition and also the Buddhist spiritual tradition. And she's a writer of haiku poetry, which there's a special word for it, haijin. Is that the word? Okay, good. I'm just going to read you a quote from what it says on her beautiful bio. It says that her craft and charism speaks of ancestral memory, philosophy, rituals, love, politics, spirituality, history, and her story. So I am very, just personally, like, extremely glad to have Sister Sharifa here to share with us. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, Amy, for the invitation. When Amy first suggested this theme to me, preparing for the election spiritually and politically, there were some groups of words that just came almost immediately into my mind. The first grouping was releasing a whirlwind of goodwill. That was the first grouping, releasing a whirlwind of goodwill. Those words were followed very quickly by the words ritual, remaining steadfast in ritual. So those were the groupings of words. Releasing a whirlwind of goodwill, ritual, remaining steadfast in ritual. So ultimately, the connection of the two in that our rituals, whatever they may be, bring about the releasing of a whirlwind of goodwill. The thought is that this is to be the engagement pre, during, and post-election, so that no matter the outcomes, we release a whirlwind of goodwill. There are two offerings in support of this whirlwind that came as well. One is biblical, and the second is the Four Crows prophecy of the Lenape people of Delaware, New Jersey, and Eastern Pennsylvania. So that's the area where I live in Philadelphia. So as I read these two, I ask you to keep in mind that idea of releasing a whirlwind of goodwill and remaining steadfast in ritual. So now the first is from the book of Luke, chapter 11, verses 1 through 11, where the traveling master teacher named Jesus was asked by his students how to make a daily ritual of prayer. The story says, he was praying in a certain place, and when he had finished, one of his disciples said to him, "Lord, teach us to pray, just as John taught his disciples." He said to them, "When you pray, say, Father, hallowed be your name. Your kingdom come. Give us each day our daily bread, and forgive us our sins, for we ourselves forgive everyone in debt to us. And do not subject us to the final test." And he said to them, "Suppose one of you has a friend to whom he goes at midnight and says, 'Friend, lend me 3 loaves of bread, for a friend of mine has arrived at my house from a journey, and I have nothing to offer him.' And he says in reply from within, 'Do not bother me. The door has already been locked, and my children and I are already in bed. I cannot get up to give you anything.' I tell you," says Jesus, If he does not get up to give him the loaves because of their friendship, he will get up to give him whatever he needs because of his persistence. And I tell you, he goes on, ask and you will receive. Seek and you will find. Knock and the door will be open to you. For everyone who asks receives, and the one who seeks finds, and to the one who knocks, the door will be opened. Now, secondly, is the prophecy of the four crows from the Lenape people. Long ago, it was said that fox would be loosed upon the earth. Also, it was said 4 crows, they would come. First crow flew the way of harmony with the Creator. Second crow tried to clean the world, but he became sick and he died. Third crow, he saw him dead, his brother, and he hid. Fourth crow flew the way of harmony again with the Creator. It is said the caretakers, they will live together on the earth. And so it is my hope that as we prepare for the election, spiritually and politically, we will keep an ear to the door. We will listen out for the one who is asking, who is seeking, and who is knocking. And as we remain steadfast throughout all of this in our rituals, we will stir up and release a whirlwind of goodwill. And we will witness the caretakers living together in harmony on the earth. As a closing haiku, this is actually coming from an Ifa tradition, which is also part of my spiritual lineage, Ifa, Yoruba, or Santeria. And I wrote this thinking about the fires that are burning and calling on Oya, who is the mother of the winds. Oya, cleansing wind, what burns without, burns within. May the healers heal.
Ashe.
Ashe.
Thank you so much, Sister Sharifa. I want to now introduce my friend, Natibo, who I just recently met. We were on a webinar around Blacks for Palestine. We were both panelists, and we had a chance to talk about concerns that are really important to us in this moment, especially given the news, the unpeaceful process that's happening right now with some Arab states who are anyway. But Natibo is a DC-based organizer and is from raised in DC and Gettysburg, Maryland. And I'll let them say more about their work, but they grew up revolutionarily in the struggle for ending apartheid in South Africa. And I'm just so excited to hear from Natibo. They're part of work with organizing with BYP 100, local organizing in the first ward of DC, mutual aid, and doing Palestinian solidarity work. And I'll let them say more about their work. Go ahead, Natibo.
Hi, everyone. It's so good to be with you today. I'm calling in from stolen Piscataway land This land was taken from the Piscataway people through the site recognition policy, where colonizers said that that this land was theirs because they saw it, which is a similar policy to what we see happening in Palestine and what's referred to as Israel. With that, I'm here humbly and thankfully. I send my greetings and thank you again, Dave, for inviting me. I'm really excited to be here with y'all. And I'm really tired and I'm really frustrated, and I'm sure y'all are with me there. So I kind of wanted to talk to you a little bit about my emergency go bag. Right now, our world is facing immense suffering. We're seeing extreme weather events destroy entire communities with the blink of an eye. But we also have each other throughout this. And much like preparing for these extreme weather events, with the tumultuous election upon us, we must also prepare. And so for me, much like the title of this discussion, that is both a spiritual and political preparation. And so with me in my emergency go bag, I have to bring with me the tools that I need to survive another 4 years in this country, and make sure that my community survives another 4 years. And so with me, I bring the elements because for me, being close to water and earth is really healing and grounding. And I appreciate Dave for sharing your altar with us today, because I know I find peace when water is nearby. So I carry that in my emergency go bag. I also carry in my emergency go bag some, mental preparation. I'm preparing mentally for 2 scenarios of this election. One where we will, our country will deepen into the clutches of fascism and xenophobia. Sorry, I live near a hospital, so there are a lot of helicopters that go by. Sorry if it's hard to hear. So for one scenario, I prepare for, fascism to continue. And then the other scenario, I'm also preparing to be gaslit by the Democratic Party and by liberals who might think they may be in solidarity with me, because I know that Joe Biden also won't get me free. And so I have to be mentally prepared and emotionally and spiritually prepared for both scenarios. And so I encourage you to prepare for both of those things, and prepare your community for both of those scenarios. And Black folks, we carry this tension within us because we've seen with the elections how we can bring in radical leaders into the formal electoral process, but we also see broken promises and empty checks, zero, we're still waiting for our stimulus checks. So it's kind of a dual tension. For me, I think about my father and my grandparents who fought to have access to the ballot box amongst many things. Yet I also struggle with, do I want to participate in this process that I see as hurting our communities in a lot of ways? People have to, literally fight to live, to sometimes to even vote. And so how do I interact with that system? How do I interact with those contradictions? That's something that I carry with me in my emergency go bag, because I have to walk with that and sit with that tension as we get closer and closer to November, and also as I wait for my ballot to come in the mail. And so I encourage y'all to also sit with that tension and do what feels best for you spiritually, and politically. I think about, my ancestor, Fannie Lou Hamer, who, you know, in an unfortunate parallel, as we're seeing forcible sterilizations come to the light in detention centers across this country, as we anticipate learning more and more about the evils happening in detention centers, I think and I call upon Fannie Lou to carry me through this moment, because as we get closer to the elections, we know that the politicization of bodies and of reproductive justice is going to continue. And so now I have to remember that that issue and that pain, and also that freedom, has to be in my emergency go bag. It can't be something that I forget and leave behind. So for me, I just encourage y'all to think about what you need to get through November, and what you need to do to prepare post November, because our organizing, our spiritual healing must continue, despite the storms that surround us. And it's really, we have, the countdown is beginning. But I see spaces like this as a way to connect and be strategic in our preparedness, instead of, reacting to what is imminent. So again, I really appreciate being with y'all today. And with that, I will close out my portion.
Ashe.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Ntebo. Go ahead, David. I'm sorry.
So next, thank you so much, Ntebo. Ashe, Ashe, Ashe. And next we have our good friend of our community, Alan. And I'm just gonna pull up your bio real quick. So Alan is, I met Alan maybe about 2 years ago at, I wanna say a pre-COVID, when we could still shake hands or hug. And Alan has been a supporter of the Community of Living Traditions, and you were on the advisory board for Stony Point Center as well, right? Or
Still am, to the
still are,
extent
yeah.
that is.
Lots have changed, but
Yeah.
Also Alan is the founder of Sacred River Healing, and is a healer. And say more about yourself and
Okay. Well, first I want to thank you, Amy and David. David, especially for that beautiful prayer invocation, and Sister Sharifa for your very helpful vision of the whirlwind of goodwill that we collectively can bring about. And Ntebo, for your very wise counsel in telling us to be prepared for whatever is about to come about, and to kind of discern some of those possibilities. I function some of the time, one of the hats I wear is a psychotherapist, and I get a window into the thinking and feeling of a variety of people that way. And I can honestly say for sure, I have, through that and through just social interacting, I've never seen a level of terror, certainly in the white community, that I'm seeing now. And I think the whole country, if not the world, is being called to, is the sound okay? Are you able to hear me all right? Yeah, is being called to go
Yes.
really, really deep, to go and recognize that there is a lot of fear, to recognize that there's tremendous frustration, confusion, and the people that I talk to really are struggling not to hate. And they're finding it not easy to not react to the hate with hate. And I just want to call attention to that, because I think that is a noble aspiration in a way. Ultimately, it's the calling to really go to who we really are, which is compassionate, loving beings. And that's found primarily through spiritual work. And I think unless people devote some amount of time, literally allow themselves to take the time, even to step away from the activities of the world, even the political activities that are so important at this time, and at least once a day, do the kind of rituals or the kind of prayers or the kind of meditations or the kind of immersion in the elements of nature that allow them to cultivate the consciousness that is the medicine for hate. I feel like unless we do that, or let me just not even warn about unless we do that. Let me just say, I think we need to do that. We all need to find that time and give ourselves that space. If nothing else, to retain the strength to carry on, to do what we need to do. People are also struggling, maybe not everybody on this particular panel or in this group, but people are struggling to know what they can do, how they can help. And they are in many instances naive and floundering and innocent, so to speak, in terms of their own complicity in the things that are going on. But they are struggling to find a vision for themselves and struggling to know how can they join the forces that are working to heal the earth, to heal the rifts between humans and the rifts between humans and Mother Nature herself, which is a primary problem that we all are facing. So I think it's helpful for us to see the yearning in those who sometimes look like they just don't get it. To try to understand the core of what it is that they're wanting, and finding that it's really the same thing in many ways as that which progressives and people seeking racial justice and peace and environmental harmony want. So that's an important piece. You know, there's a view that can be found deep inside us, from which it really feels true that it's all perfect, that it really is okay. And that goes against the also true feeling that there's a tremendous amount of things that are wrong. Terrible things. And I've kind of made it my life's work to try to find a way to be with both of those realities, to find the space inside where there is peace, where there is even joy at the unfolding of the universe, and to at the same time embrace the fact that I don't stay there all the time, and that some of that time where I'm impassioned to do something about what's wrong in the world is also part of that perfection. So maybe that's all I need to say right now. I'm really thankful to be here and to learn from you all. One very practical thing about the politics of the November election. And I've only recently kind of really heard this idea formulated, and I think it's quite helpful. I think the population at large needs to be prepared, and we need to do whatever we can to prepare people for the fact that it's not going to be election night. It's going to be election month or months. And if people are not prepared for that, and if the media isn't pressured to make that reality real, things are going to be worse than the worse they already are going to be. Because we're going to live through a very tough series of months ahead, no question about that. So we're going to be called on to really hold steady. But I think that educational point can be made to people, and that could help a lot. If people are not expecting election night to be the decision that decides who's the president of the United States. Okay, thanks. Blessings.
Ashe,
Thank
ashe.
you.
Thank you. You know, this conversation harkens back. One of our original conversations was reading Parable of the Sower and Parable of the Talents. We did that as a book club. And, you know, I keep thinking, you know, like, so I'm appreciative of Alan, you know, like the importance of staying, like being prepared, being compassionate, being who we are. And I felt that in the main character, Octavia Butler, his main character in the book, was this compassionate person despite what was happening. And then Sister Sharifa, like really pulling us into the importance of ritual and staying connected. And then Natibo, like really like reinforcing and preparing us for like what should we carry with us. And you know, I'm just briefly, I wonder if the three of you kind of said it, Alan, a little bit, but I wonder if the three of you could speak a little bit more to like how do we do, like maybe it's not how do we do that, but maybe speak to just for a minute or so, speak to what we believe is going to happen. And if COVID and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor and California, Oregon, or any clues to like, you know, what people are feeling and thinking about will be exacerbated. And maybe let's work our way backwards. Alan, if you could jump back in, then Tipo, then Sister Sharif. Or any one of the panelists who wants to speak.
I'm not quite sure I understood the question, David. Could you just kind of succinctly put it in a...
Did you just asking if you could speak more
about
to your last point? What people might expect.
What's going to happen in November and
Yeah.
how to respond to that?
Sure.
Well, I see a message from someone, Vince, who I don't think I know, but he said there's a civil war brewing no matter who wins the election. That's a possibility. That's one possibility of actual levels of some kind of armed struggles. I'm hopeful, as in your opening prayer, that that's not the case, that that's not going to happen, that enough people of goodwill or civility will prevail. I think it's going to be contested no matter what. And the turmoil in that, we saw what happened with Bush and Gore. This will be much bigger than that, most likely. I'm not really fond of making predictions because I mostly don't know what's going to happen tomorrow, let alone in November. But I feel pretty certain that some of those things are going to happen. There's going to be a lot of conflict and a lot of turmoil. And yeah. Others, Sister Sharifa or Debo?
I think for me, it's not so much the details of what will happen, it's the cycles that are happening and will continue to happen. And I think that's what I draw from what the Four Crows prophecy of the Lenape is, that we have these patterns. So when they speak about fox being loosed on the earth, we can look at that in a really definite sense and say, okay, we have Donald Trump. He's like the fox, the wily fox who has been loosed on the earth. And then what will happen? We will see these four patterns. We'll see the folks who will fly the way of harmony with the Creator. They will observe their rituals. They will release into this chaos what their spirituality gives them, prepares them to release in moments like this. We will see folks who will be like the second crow, who will try to clean up the world. They will become sick and they will die. We are seeing it. We're seeing it in real time. People are becoming sick and they are dying. Folks who have marched in the streets for years and they're falling sick from cancers and heart attacks. And these are folks who have been cleaning the world for 30, 40, 50 years. Women who have stood outside of nuclear plants and died from breast cancer. You know, we are seeing the folks who have tried to clean the world become sick and die. We are seeing that third crow who saw his brother or sister laying dead and ran and hid for fear of not wanting it to happen to them. Folks who we might have marched outside and now cannot be found anywhere because they are hiding, because they are afraid. We will see that. And then we will see ultimately that fourth crow who through everything will fly the way of harmony again. But no matter what, the caretakers will live together on the earth. That is the thing. And that's why for me, I think it's not so much the detail, but just as Alan called it, the vision of what the people are giving us, the Lenape people are giving us, that is who we are. And I don't mean that in the cliche sense, like, you know, you hear as Antiba was talking about the Democrats, as you hear them saying, this isn't who we are. I don't mean it in that cliche sense. I mean, really and truly, and this speaks to the Buddhist lineage that Amy was referring to, that our true nature, in Buddhism, it's known as the Buddha nature, the Rigpa, that truth that is in each of us. That is who we are. That is who we are. And Alan, when I hear you talk about the terror in the white community, and you were saying that somehow there's something, I don't want to say relatable, but you're saying, you know, that there's some connection there between all of us. And what I'm feeling in that is also part of that Buddhist essence, in that every being wants happiness. Every being wants an end to suffering. Now, there are other things that they might want that I truly cannot relate to. They might not want to see anybody with my face on the planet, but that doesn't mean they themselves don't want to be free from suffering and have happiness. So that walk for me is in that general vision, that large vision, but getting caught in the details for me of what's going to happen is it's a trap. For me, spiritually, it's a trap. And that's a trap I use my spirituality to avoid. I don't know if any of that makes sense. But those are my thoughts.
Right.
I can be brief. You know, I think for me, I know regardless of what happens and with the elections, and you're right, Alan, it's not going to be one day, it's going to be at least a month, because we know we're voting by mail, so it's a different scenario than we've seen before. I know that regardless of what happens, my strength and our collective strength is what's going to get us through. And I don't mean that in a cliche way. I mean the systems and the principles that we've put in place in this time of great suffering will last. Like I truly believe it will last. I believe that the mutual aid networks that have been set up across the world will continue and we've been tested time and time again throughout this pandemic and through this uprising with what resources we have access to. I believe those will continue. I believe that we will continue to share skills with one another and find ways to rejoice and you know, find love and collective healing. I really believe that that will continue to happen regardless of what scenario happens with the White House. And I encourage us to, you know, not overstate the election itself, and to be grounded in one another, in our relationships, our everyday relationships, and in our community. So to me, that is something that I am anticipating and I am looking forward to.
You know, I just want to add that it is easy to get caught in the negative, and I may have done that myself in responding to your question, David. And I appreciate the reminders that there's a lot to be grateful for. There's a lot of incredible growth of movement activity on all fronts, intersecting with each other, that has, as far as in my lifetime, never been here. And it's a beautiful thing to be part of. And, you know, gives me a lot of warmth in my heart when I think of it.
I'm just deeply appreciative of this. Like, this has been so important for me.